They laughed the moment they saw her. Faded olive jacket, mud-scuffed boots, a rifle so old it looked like it belonged in a war museum rather than a world-class shooting range. She didn't belong, not to them. Not here. The sign above the gate gleamed in steel and glass. Hawthorne Elite Range, a place where privilege pulled the trigger before fingers did. VIP lanes, elite memberships, and a price tag that could buy houses kept the outsiders at bay. But today, someone had slipped through their wall. She stood there. Callie Rhodes, 23, silent and still, like a misplaced shadow in a place that ran on ego and polish. Her auburn braid shimmered in the sunlight, but no one noticed the quiet fire in her hazel eyes. All they saw was what she wore, and what she didn't. The receptionist, a man named Trent Holloway, sharp suit and sharper sneer, looked her up and down as if inspecting a stain. "This range doesn't allow the lost and confused," he said, lips curling. From behind him, a boy in a $4,000 tracksuit scoffed. Troy Morgan, son of a hedge fund titan, leaned against a glass wall like he owned it. "They letting in mops and maintenance now?" he said to a chorus of laughter. Callie didn't blink. She just reached into her jacket, pulled out a worn VIP pass, and held it out like a loaded weapon. Trent Holloway's scanner beeped green, a sound that silenced the immediate smirks. He faltered. This must be a mistake," he muttered, stepping aside. But the damage had been done. The crowd around her, dressed in carbon fiber gear and dripping with entitlement, was already recording. Phones tilted, captions formed, "Janitor invades the range. Must have stolen that pass from the trash." Callie walked forward, past the scoffs, past the live-streaming smirks, past the velvet rope meant to separate them from people like her. She didn't flinch. Not once. Inside, Hawthorne Elite Range stretched like a cathedral of steel and arrogance. Gunpowder laced the air. Polished black marble floors reflected shimmering LED scoreboards. Gold-framed photos of past champions lined. The walls, military legends, Olympic medalists, billionaire heirs. Each lane was reserved for the ultra-elite, senators' children, Silicon Valley prodigies, generational wealth wrapped in ballistic vests. This wasn't just a shooting range. It was a temple where skill was optional, but status was sacred. Callie stepped in like a ghost. Her presence cracked the illusion. At 23, she was striking, but not in the manicured way they understood. Her beauty was raw, untouched by the curated shine around her. Strands of hair escaped her braid like flickers of flame. Her jeans were frayed at the knees. Her M1 Garand rifle, woodstock polished smooth by time, rested on her shoulder like a story no one else knew. They didn't see the late-night drills, the whisper of her father's voice teaching her to breathe with the trigger, the lessons carved into her bones by Colonel Mason Grant. Her father, a sniper so feared, enemies called him the Phantom. He was gone now, buried with medals and silence. And Callie had made herself a promise. She'd honor his name not with words, but with aim. But none of them saw that. To them, she was a misstep in an otherwise perfect system. Dylan Knox, armed with a $12,000 custom rifle and a smirk, snorted from a leather chair. "Even cleaning staff gets access now, huh?" Another kid tossed a spent casing at her boots. "What's she gonna do? Polish the targets?" Still, Callie didn't speak. Her silence screamed louder than any insult. Then came Camilla West. Instagram famous, contract sharp, a sniper with diamond earrings that sparkled like her judgment. She stood tall, voice smooth and cruel. "This is Hawthorne, not a salvage yard," she said, gesturing toward Callie's rifle. "Maybe try the community range, sweetheart." Laughter spread like wildfire. Phones flashed. Live stream comments surged. "Welfare shooter." "This ain't cosplay, honey." At the corner, a large screen displayed live footage. Callie's face filled it. Her pale lips, her wind-burned cheeks, the expressionless calm that unnerved the comfortable. From a hospital bed far away, her mother watched, her face pale, her hands trembling with every jab. Callie knew the camera was on. She didn't care. Behind the velvet rope, she'd already endured the humiliation of 100 sideways glances. But the real firing line was still ahead. Professor Dana Carlisle, a woman whose name opened doors in Olympic circles, stepped into the lane, her crisp navy blazer screaming power. "This is highly irregular," she announced, her voice sharp enough to slice. "We don't lower standards just to entertain charity cases with antique rifles." Some clapped, others smirked. Even the head coach, Colonel Frank Maddox, a grizzled Marine with silver at his temples, spoke up. "This isn't some public rec center," he barked. "You sure you even know which end of that rifle goes bang?" Another wave of laughter, another barrage of jeers. Callie stood still. Every insult, every cut, they only pushed her deeper into the stillness that she knew best. The stillness her father taught her to find in the chaos. The stillness that came just before the shot. She let them speak, let them laugh. And then the golden boy stepped forward. Jackson Whitmore, son of billionaires, darling of the range. At 25, he was sculpted like a soldier, dressed like a GQ model in tactical black. His rifle was worth more than most cars, and every shot he fired was cheered like a touchdown. He looked at her, half grin, half threat. "If you beat me, I'll leave right now," he said, loud enough for the live stream to catch. "But if I win, you're gone, janitor." The crowd erupted, phones raised, a new challenge formed, a new joke born. Callie didn't smile, didn't twitch. She just nodded, once. The storm had begun. The challenge had been issued, the traps set, and the sharks smelled blood. As Callie Rhodes stepped deeper into the opulent heart of Hawthorne Elite Range, the quiet hum of gunfire faded. Beneath a louder, sharper noise, mockery wrapped in Wi-Fi. The lounge screens, once filled with stats and tournament replays, now centered on her. Every angle, every blemish, every thread of her worn jacket. A $1,000 camera system zoomed in on her scuffed boots like they were evidence at a crime scene. The live stream was rolling. Rifle reject trended before she even picked up a bullet. Who let in the thrift store cosplay? Homeless with a hobby? The sons of senators, the daughters of CEOs, and the influencers with 100,000 follower counts were no longer just observers. They became her digital firing squad. Every phone raised, every finger typing, every angle captured. Callie's expression never cracked. But in a hospital room across the city, her mother's did. She watched from a hospital bed, her face ghost white, lips trembling. A nurse tried to pull the tablet away. She clutched it harder. Each insult that poured from the live stream hit like shrapnel. In the lounge, Camilla West posed with her $6,000 sniper rifle, her long lashes fluttering for the camera. "This isn't a back alley carnival, girl," she sneered. "Did you think you could show up with a dinosaur and compete with professionals?" Her voice was crystal clear on the mic overhead. The audience laughed. Some shook their heads, others just smirked like they were watching a sideshow. From a leather chair, Dylan Knox sipped from his engraved titanium thermos and snorted, "Does the Smithsonian know one of their rifles wandered off?" His pack of designer-clad friends howled. One of them tossed a protein bar wrapper at Callie's boots. "Be a doll and clean that up, will ya?" Another jeered. Still, Callie's steps were measured, her face unreadable. She didn't glance at the wrapper. She didn't flinch. But the crowd wasn't done. Professor Dana Carlisle strolled to the center of the lounge like a queen entering court. Her blazer was pressed to military perfection, a sparkling brooch glittering like an accusation. "This is a professional facility," she declared, voice smooth and cold, "not a costume contest. Hawthorne stands for excellence, not nostalgia and hand-me-downs. The jab landed. Phones captured every word, every blink, every smirk. Coach Colonel Frank Maddox, still watching from beside the practice lanes, crossed his arms. His jaw was set like concrete, but his disdain was clear. "She probably thinks trigger discipline is something you learn on YouTube," he muttered, just loud enough for the crowd and the mics to catch. "Bet she couldn't hit the broad side of a barn. Fake pass. Must be stolen. Even more." Cutting was the voice from behind. Troy Morgan, draped in luxury logos, always one insult away from a viral moment. "That rifle's held together by spit and hope," he said. "Gonna fall apart before she even loads it." He flicked a coffee stirrer at her feet. "Oops, janitor, you missed a spot." Laughter spilled across the lounge like gunfire, raw, reckless, loud. Someone bumped the scoreboard so that Callie's name, misspelled on purpose, flashed in, bold. Callie Lame. Coach Pierce raised a clipboard like a gavel. "This isn't open mic night for amateurs," he said. "You're wasting our time." The lounge crowd agreed. Applause. Whistles. "Cleanup crew, please report to lane 8. 1. Girl, Mia Hall, fresh from placing third in last month's regional, crumpled up a used score sheet and tossed it at Callie's boots. "While you're at it, sweep this up," she said. The paper slid across the polished floor, grazing Callie's shoes. She didn't react, not even to look. She simply tightened her grip on her rifle and kept walking, past the score sheet, past the laughter, and toward her lane. Every step was a statement. On meters. That's all that separated her from silence. But first, she'd have to walk through fire. In a quiet corner, a retired general, now serving as a consultant, leaned over to Pierce. His voice was loaded with disdain. "This is what happens when you let scholarships in," he muttered. "No breathing, no skill, just charity cases chasing. Glory!" Phones caught it. The live stream audience caught it, and they didn't like it. Out there, beyond the walls of privilege, the internet was starting to turn. For every cruel caption, there was now a heart reacting with fire. Comments popped up in defense. Why are they so threatened by one girl? Let her shoot, then judge. She hasn't said a word, and they're already afraid. Back in the lounge, the mob couldn't hear that shift. They were too busy sharpening their jokes. Camilla West turned toward Callie once more, adjusting her scope like she was posing for a photo shoot. "Walk away, thrift store queen," she said. "Save yourself the embarrassment. Or don't. Either way, we'll enjoy the show." Troy Morgan leaned in for the final cut. "Bet she's never even fired a gun before." He wasn't just insulting her skill, he was insulting her right to exist in their world. The insults piled like sandbags around her, trying to bury her, crush her, send her crawling back out the gate where she came from. And still, Callie Rhodes didn't speak, but she was listening, and she was loading. The air was sharp with tension. Phones were recording. Laughter simmered. But behind every jeer, behind every smug expression, there was one unspoken truth creeping in. Callie Rhodes wasn't walking away. She reached lane 8, the most visible of all the VIP spots, its lighting pristine, its angle perfect for the lounge's full view. The stage was set not for a competition, but a public execution, and they expected blood. Across from her, the golden boy was already prepped. Jackson Whitmore, Hawthorne's pride, media darling, poster boy of military precision, leaned casually, against his $60,000 custom-built rifle, the matte black finish catching every light. Dressed in head-to-toe tactical gear that looked more Hollywood than battlefield, he smiled at her like she was a child who'd wandered into a chess match with grandmasters. His grin was clinical, designed to humiliate. "Let's make this interesting," he said, voice buttery smooth, microphone catching every syllable. "If you beat me, I'll walk out of here. Right now, for good." He leaned closer, lips a breath from her ear. "But if I win, you're gone. Janitor, The crowd howled in delight. Phones panned across the room as a new stream title trended. Caldwell V's Custodian, Not Your Mop, V's Marksman. Callie didn't blink. She didn't smile. She didn't argue. She just nodded, slow, silent, like a fuse being lit. Coach. Pierce chuckled bitterly and stepped forward, clipboard in hand like it was a judge's gavel. "This is a waste of ammo," he muttered. "But fine. Let the fossil take a shot." Callie said nothing, but the room, packed with precision rifles and billion-dollar bloodlines, felt a shift, a subtle change in temperature. Something in her posture, the steadiness of her hands, the focus in her eyes, made even the smug ones blink. Still, the arrogance pushed forward. Troy Morgan sauntered up to the lane like a circus barker. "That rifle's a relic," he snorted, tapping the wooden stock. "Bet it jams before she gets through round one." He flicked another coffee stirrer at her boots. "Pick it up, maintenance girl." From the side, Camilla West scoffed into her scope. "You're embarrassing yourself, hun. Go home before you shoot your foot off." Mia Hull chimed in from behind a leather couch, holding up her phone. "I'm recording this for when she cries after the first misfire," she said with a grin. "Hawthorne's got a new mascot, Scrapyard Shooter." Callie adjusted her rifle, still silent, still composed. And somewhere in a quiet hospital room, her mother whispered through tears, "Steady, baby, just like your father taught you." Then the match began. Coach Pierce nodded toward Jackson. "You first, Mr. Caldwell." Jackson didn't hesitate. His movements were smooth, efficient, polished like theater. He adjusted his stance, exhaled, and fired. The screen blinked. A soft chime followed. A murmur of admiration rippled through the lounge. He fired again. 9.9, then again. 9.8 shot after shot, Jackson hit near perfection, his scores lighting up the leaderboard. 10-0, 9.9, 10.0, 9.8, 9.9, his total sat just shy of flawless. His grouping, tight, clean, precise. He stepped back, confident, sweeping a mock bow to thunderous applause. "Beat that, thrift store," he said, winking at Callie. The crowd roared with laughter. Phones flashed. The scoreboard tallied his result. 99.3, 100, coach. Pierce gave a proud nod. "That's the benchmark, folks. That's what skill looks like." All eyes turned to Callie. The cameras zoomed in. The air hung like glass, ready to shatter. She stepped up to the line. The worn wood of her father's M1 Garand rifle rested against her cheek like a memory. Her eyes narrowed. Her breathing slowed. She could still feel the forest wind where she first held that rifle in her father's arms, his voice whispering, "Stillness is power. Aim with your breath. Shoot with your soul." Behind her, the crowd held back giggles. "She's gonna miss. The paper," Tyler muttered. "She's gonna cry," Mia whispered. "She's gonna break." Vanessa smirked. Callie exhaled. Her first shot echoed. The first shot rang out like thunder in a room full of whispers. Callie Rhodes's body barely moved. Just the subtle recoil, the soft click of breath leaving her lips. The M1 Garand in her hand sang like it remembered war, like it had been waiting for this very moment to rise from relic to legend. The digital board flashed. 10.0, a soft ping followed. A melodic chime reserved only for a perfect shot. The lounge paused. A few blinked. Dylan Knox scoffed and folded his arms, forcing a laugh. "Lucky hit," he muttered. But even he didn't sound convinced. Shot two. Another thunderclap. Another chime. 10.0. The sound echoed louder this time, not just from the rifle, but in their hearts. The laughter quieted, just a touch. Camilla West's fingers slipped on her custom scope. Shot three. Clean, crisp, deadly. 10.0. The congratulatory chime played again, now unmistakable. A rare tune reserved for champions. It rang through the range like a hymn in a cathedral, and for the first time, they began to listen. Troy Morgan straightened in his seat. The mocking grin on his face twitched. "Beginner's luck," he muttered. But his voice cracked. Callie didn't even glance their way. She was gone, mentally transported. The world outside her scope no longer existed. Her father's voice echoed in the quiet between heartbeats. Focus through the noise. Breathe through the storm. Let them talk. Let the gun speak. Shot 4. 10.0. Now the lounge was silent. The digital melody grew stronger, louder, with each flawless round. Coach Pierce's clipboard trembled in his hand. Shot 5. 10.0. A headset. Clattered to the floor behind her. Dropped by an athlete who had forgotten how to hold on to it. Shot 6. 10.0. Vanessa ripped off her optic lens, her hands shaking as the numbers glowed. Callie's braid swayed gently as she adjusted her grip. Not a single wasted movement, every action born of discipline, her breathing, her posture, her gaze, surgical. The live stream exploded. Who is this girl? This is unreal. Stop everything. Callie Rhodes is a beast. Shot 7. 10.0. The chime was now an anthem. The lounge resembled a courtroom where everyone had just realized they were guilty. Phones dropped. Smirks evaporated. Dylan Knox's face had gone pale, his lips parted but speechless. Shot 8. 10.0. Vanessa's hands gripped her designer jacket like it was armor, but it wasn't enough to protect her from this humiliation. Shot 9. 10.0. The final shot loomed like destiny. Even Jackson Whitmore, once cool, once cocky, now leaned forward, brows furrowed, heart pounding in disbelief. His perfect world was unraveling in front of everyone. The lounge was a graveyard, silent, frozen, watching history write itself in real time. And then came shot 10. Callie's finger curled around the trigger one last time. She exhaled. The rifle fired. The shot tore through the target with mathematical precision, directly through the first bullet's path. Not a millimeter off. The board lit up with a flare of red and gold. Score 100.0, 100, new facility record. Congratulatory melody burst like a victory anthem across the speakers. The scoreboard blinked again. Record broken. The audience erupted, not with laughter, but with gasps, disbelief, awe. Phones came back up, but now they weren't mocking her. They were trying to capture what victory looked like. Callie lowered, her rifle with the same grace she'd lifted it, calm, steady. Her hazel eyes swept the room, not with arrogance, but clarity. Her silence pierced louder than any scream. Then she spoke, her voice soft, but every syllable struck like steel. "My father taught me to shoot when I was 6, she said, eyes locked on Jackson, Coach Pierce, and the others who'd ridiculed her. "He was the best in his unit. While you were still learning to double-click a mouse, he was teaching me to breathe with the wind." The crowd flinched like her words had been bullets. Coach Pierce slowly stood, his chest rising and falling. The grizzled Marine, who had mocked her moments ago, now looked at her with something else entirely in his eyes: respect. He began to clap, once, then again, slow, firm. The sound echoed like judgment. Then more joined in, one by one. The same people who had mocked her, laughed at her, dismissed her. They now stood to applaud. Jackson Whitmore remained frozen, staring at the board, at the numbers that would follow him forever. Callie, 100. Jackson, 99.3. His grin was gone. His pride was shattered. But his heart? It stirred with something unfamiliar. Callie's faint smile, small, almost reluctant, flashed in his direction. It burned him more than the loss. The silence that followed Callie's final shot wasn't just shock. It was reckoning. Her perfect score, 100.0, 10 flawless shots, hovered on the board like a sword. Not a single millimeter off, not one flaw to pick apart, not a moment of hesitation. She had walked into the lion's den and tamed it without raising her voice. Coach Pierce, once smug in his authority, now stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. His clipboard dangled from one hand, forgotten. The range that had once felt like a kingdom of elites now felt like it belonged to her, and Jackson Whitmore, Hawthorne's golden boy, the untouchable prince of precision, stood frozen. His perfect reputation had just been obliterated. His score, 99.3, was impressive. It had always been enough, until now. Now it looked like a misprint. A shadow compared to the storm that had just passed through the room in worn jeans and a thrift store jacket. He tried to swallow the lump forming in his throat, tried to smirk, but the muscles in his face refused to lie. The live stream chat had flipped like a wave slamming into rock. She destroyed him. Callie Rhodes is a legend. Caldwell who? Callie 100 was trending worldwide within minutes. Coach Pierce stepped forward, his voice rough like gravel but filled with something new, pride. That, he said slowly, was the finest shooting I've seen in 40 years. A hush fell over the crowd again, not because of disbelief this time, but because truth had been spoken. Even the bitterest doubters couldn't argue anymore. Camilla West, her glossy lip curled with disbelief, lowered her rifle. Her face had gone pale, her voice lost. She turned away, slowly packing up her gear like someone who had just been replaced. Troy Morgan said nothing. His smug face was now a mask of shame. The coffee stirrer he'd thrown earlier lay beside Callie's foot like a forgotten weapon. Mia Hall, who had laughed the loudest, avoided eye contact entirely. Her designer jacket, once armor, now looked like costume jewelry in a war zone. They weren't just quiet. They were exposed. In the back of the lounge, a screen flickered. The director of the range, General Victor Lane, a towering figure with silver hair and eyes that had seen 3 wars, stepped onto the floor. He didn't smile. He didn't posture. He simply looked at Callie and spoke into the central mic. Callie Rhodes has redefined excellence. Every syllable echoed like a verdict. He turned toward the staff, his voice stern now, cutting like a command. Those who mocked her, those who questioned her place here, face immediate suspension pending review. Trent Holloway, the receptionist who had blocked her at the gate, paled. Professor Dana Carlisle took a step back, her mouth opening, then closing without sound. Tate raised a hand and tapped the central display. The digital board shifted, revealing a new plaque beneath the record score. Callie Rhodes, record holder, 100.0, 100. The crowd erupted, but this time with thunderous, authentic applause. No sneers, no sarcasm, just admiration. And Jackson Whitmore. He stepped forward slowly, his voice cracked. Not from weakness, but from truth trying to claw its way out. I was an idiot, he said. You're not just better. You're untouchable. The live stream caught every word, every raw second. Viewers watched as the once arrogant heir to the Hawthorne throne bowed, figuratively and emotionally, to the girl they'd all dismissed. But Callie didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She looked at him, eyes calm, mouth neutral, and nodded. Just once. It was more powerful than 1,000 comebacks, and somehow that nod shattered Jackson more than the loss. Coach Pierce turned toward him. His voice boomed through the room. Mr. Caldwell, your scores are no longer the standard. Step aside. Jackson's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. He stepped back, slowly, shoulders heavy, but his eyes, they never left Callie. Not with resentment, not with bitterness, but with awe. He watched her like a man seeing fire for the first time, controlled, beautiful, capable of burning down everything he thought he knew and lighting up something new in its place. The audience clapped louder. The hierarchy of Hawthorne crumbled with each beat, and for the first time, Callie Rhodes stood where she had always belonged, at the top. For a moment, it felt like time itself had paused. The range, once filled with the crackle of gunfire, the smug hum of entitlement, now stood in complete silence, not because someone had ordered it, but because Callie Rhodes had earned it. Her name glowed from the leaderboard, bright and unshakable. Callie Rhodes, facility record, 100 Poro, 100A simple name. No title, no legacy surname, no military medals to her credit, just 10 perfect shots that shattered every rule the range had lived by. She stood motionless beneath the scoreboard. Her rifle now rested at her side like a loyal companion after war. Her faded jacket, once mocked, now looked like battle armor, worn not with shame, but with honor. General Victor Lane still stood near the mic, arms crossed. "Hawthorne Elite is no longer just a name," he said, his voice slow, deliberate. "It's a standard, and today, that standard has changed." He turned to the staff. "Trent Holloway, Professor Vance, your behavior today will be reviewed by the board. Effective. Immediately you are suspended." Gasps fluttered across the room. Trent Holloway's smug composure vanished, replaced by wide-eyed panic. "But sir, you forgot why we exist," Tate cut him off. "Skill over status, purpose over pretense." Professor Dana Carlisle, who had stood tall with diamond earrings and venomous judgment earlier, now shrank beneath the weight of the silence. Her high heels clicked on the marble as she quietly stepped back, like someone who had just realized the castle she built was made of sand. The crowd shifted, their arrogance crumbling around their designer shoes. Troy Morgan's swagger had drained from his face. He slunk into the background, his phone now a useless brick in his hand. Camilla West silently packed her gear, her usual flair now dulled. Her lips were pressed tight, eyes cast low. The glare of the cameras no longer fed her. It exposed her. Even Dylan Knox, the boy who had mocked her rifle as a museum piece, just stared at the ground, his $12,000 weapon untouched beside him. Mia Hall, the girl who had tossed a crumpled score sheet at Callie's feet, slowly walked forward. Her voice, once sharp and cruel, now cracked with something that sounded like regret. I was wrong to laugh," she said. "You're what this range should be." Others nodded behind. Her. They didn't cheer this time. They didn't clap for attention. They simply stood and looked at Callie like people watching the sunrise after a storm, and somewhere far away in a hospital room lit by beeping machines and soft overhead lights, Callie's mother cried. Not from pain, not from fear, but from pride. In the back of the room, a live stream camera still rolled, broadcasting to hundreds of thousands who had tuned in expecting a humiliation. Instead, they witnessed a coronation. Callie Rhodes is the real deal. She silenced a room with precision. I'll never judge a girl with a faded jacket again. The range's social media was flooded. Callie 100, legend in jeans, Bullet Queen. And amid all of this, Jackson Whitmore watched. He hadn't moved. His hands, which once handled his rifle with confidence, were now at his sides, useless. His mind raced, but his heart had already surrendered. She had beat him. Publicly. Completely. But that wasn't what unraveled him. It was her poise. It was how she said nothing while the world screamed around her. It was the way her smile, small, restrained, seemed to reach places inside him he didn't know existed. He stepped forward. The crowd parted without a word. Their golden boy, now dethroned, walked until he stood inches from the girl in the worn jacket. I don't deserve your time, he said, voice low, not performative, just honest. But I'd be a fool not to try. You're not just a shooter. You're a force. She looked at him, and then, for the first time, She smiled. Not the quiet fire, not the polite nod, but something warm, something that softened the steel. Coffee's. A start, she said, her voice gentle but grounded. Jackson blinked. That was it? Coffee? But that one sentence, so casual, so Callie, was the beginning of something bigger than a score. The crowd stayed back, watching, not with judgment, not even with curiosity, but with respect. Even Coach Pierce gave a slight nod, as if to say, "Good shot, kid." In more ways than one, from this day on, no one would look at Lane 8 the same. It wasn't just the lane where records were broken. It was the place where a quiet woman with an old rifle rewrote the future, one bullet at a time. The crowd was still, dispersing when Jackson Whitmore found himself frozen in place. His usual swagger, the practiced charm, the careless tilt of his head, the grin that could win over any room, was gone. Something inside him had cracked, and through that crack, light was pouring in. He had come here today to maintain his crown, to polish the myth of the invincible heir. Instead, he had been dismantled, quietly and completely, by a girl in a faded olive jacket and old boots, a girl who hadn't uttered a single word until it was over. And when she did speak, it wasn't to boast or gloat, it was to honor her father. Jackson had grown up surrounded by noise, applause, praise, private tutors, media features, but none of it had prepared him for the sound of Callie Rhodes's silence. It haunted him in the most beautiful way. He found her near the back hallway, alone now, the energy of the range cooling behind her like a storm that had passed. She was cleaning her rifle with reverence, each motion calm, ritualistic. She hadn't changed, no victory dance, no selfies, just the same quiet grace that had walked in hours ago. "Hey," Jackson said softly. She glanced up, one brow slightly raised. No anger, no smugness, just curiosity. He rubbed the back of his neck, an unfamiliar nervous twitch. "I wanted to say, thank you." "Thank you?" she asked, tilting her head. "For proving me wrong," he said, eyes fixed on hers. "I needed it." Callie didn't reply right away. She just kept cleaning her rifle, the cloth sweeping across the wood like she was polishing memories. Then she said, "You're not the first person who thought I didn't belong, but you might be the first who's apologized." Her voice wasn't cold. It was honest, and that hit harder than anything else. "I didn't just think you didn't belong," Jackson admitted. "I thought I was better. That everyone was." He chuckled, dry, bitter, embarrassed. "And then you fired shot. One, and my whole damn world rearranged." Callie smiled, not the faint curve of professionalism from earlier, but something warmer, something softer. "You should get used to being wrong," she teased. Jackson laughed, and for the first time in hours, it didn't feel like he was performing. The moment hung between them, unspoken, delicate. She could have walked away. He wouldn't. Have blamed her. But she didn't. Instead, she looked at him. Really looked at him. Not the golden boy, not the heir, but the man underneath all that. "You said something earlier," she said. "Something about not deserving my time." Nodded, unsure where she was going with it. "I don't think time works like that," she continued. "You don't earn it, you give it, to people who surprise you." He blinked, then smiled. "I want to surprise you," he said. "That's a start," Callie replied. "But don't try to impress me with shooting. I've seen the best." Jackson raised a hand in mock surrender. "Understood. I won't compete with a ghost." Callie's eyes softened. "He wasn't a ghost," she said. "He was real. But he taught me that it's not about being the best. It's about being steady." Jackson nodded, his chest tight. "I'm not steady," he admitted. "Maybe not yet," Callie said. "But maybe you're worth the time." She stood, slung, her rifle over her shoulder, and turned toward the exit. He followed. They walked in silence, this time not heavy but easy. Comfortable. Outside, the California sun painted the sky in soft gold. The parking lot, once a stage for arrogance and performance, now felt like a threshold, from who they were to who they might become. At her car, a beat-up old Jeep with cracked windows and personality, Jackson hesitated. "So," he said, "about that coffee?" Callie paused at the door, turned toward him, and nodded. "Tomorrow, but don't wear anything tactical. I've had enough of that for a lifetime." Jackson grinned. "Jeans and humility. Got it." She slid into the driver's seat, engine coughing to life. As she drove off, Jackson stood alone in the golden light, heart racing. Not because he'd been defeated, but because he'd just witnessed something he couldn't unsee. Power in stillness. Strength in quiet. A woman who didn't shout but changed everything. And somewhere inside him something new took root. Respect. Admiration. Maybe even something more. But for now, coffee was a start. A month had passed since Callie Rhodes stepped into Hawthorne Elite Range and changed everything with 10 perfect shots. And in that month, the world noticed. The video of her performance had been clipped, captioned, and shared across platforms. It wasn't just trending, it was timeless. Military forums broke down her form like a masterclass. Shooting instructors paused their classes to replay her stance, her breathing. Athletes called her a phenomenon. Poets called her a storm, and the range. It would never be the same. The plaque still hung above Lane 8, polished to a shine. Callie Rhodes, 100 points row, facility record holder, stillness is power. The elite who once scoffed now fell silent when her name came up. And the velvet ropes that once separated members from nobodies had quietly been removed, because Callie Rhodes had burned that line to the ground. Inside the lounge, the whispers had changed. It wasn't who wore the most expensive gear. It was who had the discipline. The silence Callie left behind had become the new gold standard, and at the heart of this shift was a new and unlikely story. Callie and Jackson. Yes, that Jackson, the once golden boy, who had watched his world tilt off its axis that day, had begun to change in its aftermath. Not in the way people expected. He didn't disappear in shame or lash out in bitterness. He leaned in. He learned. He started showing up early, not to dominate, but to observe. He practiced breathing, not posturing. He watched Callie's footage like scripture, and slowly his world got quieter, his aim steadier. He wasn't trying to win anymore. He was trying to understand. Their coffee date had turned into 3, then 5. They didn't talk about scores or trophies. They talked about growing up in shadows, his cast by legacy, hers cast by grief. They talked about her father, Colonel Mason Grant, and how he used to say, "Your name doesn't get you on the scoreboard. Your stillness does." Jackson listened, really listened, like it was the first time anyone had told him the truth without trying to impress or manipulate him, and slowly. Callie let him in. 3 months later, he proposed. Not at a gala, not in front of cameras. In the woods, at the old backwoods range where she had first learned to shoot with her father. He carved her name into the wood beside her father's initials and gave her a simple silver ring, just like her, strong, unpretentious, unforgettable. She said yes. Their wedding was small. No flash, no headlines, just close friends, a few family, members, and the sound of wind through pine trees. And inside the Hawthorne Elite Range, the leaderboard still glowed with her name. But now it had something new beneath it. Callie Rhodes, record holder, 100 points 100 range advisor and senior coach, because after months of protest from members, staff, and even former competitors, General Victor Lane had offered Callie a permanent position, not out of charity but necessity. "People come here," he said, "to learn how to shoot. Now, they come to learn from you." The day she walked into the coaching lounge in her faded jacket, not a single soul laughed. They stood. Even Coach Pierce, the old Marine who had once doubted her, now nodded every time he passed her in the hallway. "Legacy," he said once. "That's what you built, in 10 shots. And Jackson?" He stood beside her, quieter now, stronger now, better now, not because he was chasing a crown, but because he'd found something real. They still practiced together, but the competition had faded. What remained was balance, partnership, fire, and stillness, side by side. The range had changed. The culture had shifted. But Callie? Callie hadn't. She still drove her old Jeep. She still wore her father's jacket. She still carried that M1 Garand like it was a piece of her soul. Because it was. And even as sponsors offered her contracts and magazines begged for interviews, she stayed rooted, grounded, because she knew the truth her father taught her long ago. The loudest person in the room rarely hits the center. And Callie Rhodes. She didn't need noise. She had 10 perfect shots, a love that found her in silence, and a legacy that would never be forgotten.